Hello and welcome to Try Math, your online math tutor. This video is a continuation of the first part of this video, which showed how to solve quadratic equations by factoring. This one will feature two different methods of finding how to factor a quadratic equation. First method is called complete the square, and the second one is called square root method. I'm going to show the square root method first, as it is the easier method. For example, if we have the equation x squared minus 9 is equal to 0, what you would simply do is you would move the 9 to the other side, and you would take the square root of both sides and say that it is equal to each other. From there, since you are square rooting a variable, you get plus or minus on the other side because there are two possibilities. So you get plus or minus square root 9, and so therefore the square root of 9 is 3, so you get x is equal to either plus or minus 3. And we can go back to our notation here of x plus g times x plus h, with of course a in front, and say that g and h are both 3, because we have a which is equal to 1, so 1 times x plus 3 times x minus 3 is equal to 0, because g plus h has to be equal to 0, and g times h is equal to negative 9. And we know that because 3 minus 3 is equal to 0, and 3 times negative 3 is equal to 9. Of course, you can check your answer always by expanding, so x times x plus x times negative 3 plus 3 times x plus 3 times negative 3. And you will get x squared minus 3x plus 3x minus 9. These two terms cancel out, and of course you have your g and your h here, and you will be left with x squared minus 9 equals 0. So we clearly got the right answer. I don't really think I have to show the theory behind this. It's basically what I've shown in my other video, but you plug in b is equal to 0. So let's just delete that and work on the harder method, the complete the square method, which is actually a very useful method, and we're going to see something that we saw before with the quadratic formula when we do this method. So I'm going to take the equation 2x squared minus 8x plus 2. And I'm going to use this example first before I show you the theory behind it, because the theory is a little bit more complicated. So we're going to say that this is equal to 0, and we're going to factor out our a like we usually do. So we get 4x plus 1, and here is equal to 0. Like we did before, we're going to divide both sides by 2, and 0 divided by 2 is still 0. So we're left with x squared minus 4x plus 1 is equal to 0. Now what we're going to do is we're going to move the c to the other side. So we'll be left with x squared minus 4x is equal to negative 1. What we want to do next is we want to take half of b and square it, and add it to both sides. So we want to put that here, and we want to put that here. Okay? So half of 4 is 2, and the square, since negative 4 squared is equal to 4, negative 2 squared is equal to 4, we just add x squared minus 4x plus 4 is equal to negative 1 plus 4. And then we make that a little bit more simple, and we get is equal to 3. So next thing we want to do is that we want to take something that adds up to 4 or negative 4, and something that multiplies to positive 4. We know that 2 times 2 is equal to 4, and we know that negative 2 times negative 2 is equal to 4. So we can say that negative 2 minus 2 is equal to negative 4 is also true. So we can say that x minus 2 times x minus 2 will give us this. And we can easily check that by expanding. X times x will be x squared, x times negative 2, and then negative 2 times x will be minus 4x. I'll just write that twice though. And then negative 2 times negative 2 will be positive 4. And that's exactly what we have here with our g and our h. So let's go back a step and say that this is equal to 3. Of course, we're not really even done yet, because we haven't found out the g and h for this one, just for this one. So we're going to say that's equal to 3, and we're actually going to make this x minus 2 squared, since something multiplied by itself is a square. And then we're going to square root both sides, as we did in the square root method, and we're going to get x minus 2 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 3. So then we move 2 to the other side, and we're left with 2 plus or minus square root 3. And then that will be your answer for each x. So in the brackets, you will have x plus whatever the addition of 2 plus square root 3 is, and the addition of 2 minus square root 3. And there you have it. Now, I'll show you the theory behind this and how it links to the quadratic formula, and some of you might be surprised. We have our notation, ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. Like I've always said, you want to take out the a, and you have x squared plus b over a times x plus c over a is equal to 0. Since like we did in the example, we want to get rid of a, we just have to divide both sides by a. So we'll have x squared plus b over a times x plus c over a is equal to 0. And this works because if you divide a, if you take 0 divided by a, you'll still have 0, just as you would take 0 times a. Anything multiplied or dividing 0 is always equal to 0. So now we have this, and what we want to do next is we want to move this c to the other side. So what we do is we do that, and we take x squared plus b over a times x is equal to negative c over a. The next step is what I want to do is we want to take half of this and square it. So I'm going to write x squared plus b over a times x plus b over 2a, since we're taking half, squared is equal to negative c over a plus b over 2a. And like I said, we added both sides, so we have that there. Next step is what we want to do is we actually want to make this a little bit simpler for ourselves. So we write x squared plus b over a x plus b squared over 4a squared, because 2a squared is 4 times a times a, or 2 times 2 times a times a, so it's 4a squared. And we're going to say that it's equal to negative c over a plus b squared over 4a squared. Next step we're going to do is we're going to try and make these into the same common denominator to make things easier for us. So how we do that is pretty simple. We want to take the 4a squared right here and multiply it here and here. So we'll have 4a squared times negative c over 4a squared times a plus, and then we want to take a and multiply it here and here. We'll have b squared times a over 4a squared times a. And as we can see, this is a common denominator. And so we can just simply say 4a squared times c, or this would be negative 4, plus ab squared over 4a cubed. Since this is cubed and there's an a in both of these terms, we can subtract 1 here. We'll have it to the power of 1, or we can just say there's nothing there. And then we'll have plus b squared over a squared. So let's take that, and we're going to add it to the other side because it's equivalent to this, to make things easier for ourselves. Alright, next step is what we did here in the example question was we found out that when we had x squared plus b over a x plus b squared over 4a squared, what we had was inside the brackets x plus b over 2a times x plus b over 2a. And we could simply expand this to see if this is correct, and we'll get x squared plus b over 2a plus b over 2a, x of course, plus b squared over 4a squared. And this will add up to this, because when we add a half to a half, we will have a whole. So we can just, since that's proven, let's move on over here. And since something multiplied by itself becomes a square, we can just put in, this is square root 2. And over here on this side, we'll just continue our notation, 4ac plus b squared over 4a squared. What we want to do then is we want to take square root of both sides, as we did in the example question. And we'll have x plus b over 2a is equal to the square root of b squared minus 4ac over the square root of 4a squared. The square root of 4a squared is going to be, this is going to be plus or minus. The square root of 4a squared is going to be 2a, because 2a times 2a is equal to 4a squared, as we did before. So this is just going to be 2a. Now what we want to do is we want to move this to the other side and isolate x. So x is equal to b over 2a plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. We see that these two terms have a common denominator. So what we're going to do is we're going to put them together. X is equal to, I forgot to put a negative over here when we moved it to the other side. So that's going to be negative b over 2a. We still have a common denominator, so we're going to put them in the same denominator, and we're going to get negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. And we're going to take that whole thing and put them on the common denominator of 2a. Now if you look here, this is exactly the quadratic formula, which is what we used in part 1, and which is what you will probably have learned or will learn. So we can see that completing the square actually gets us the quadratic formula, since some of you might have been wondering, where did that formula come from? And so that's one way of doing the quadratic formula, or completing the square, but a simpler way without this large equation. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you learned something today. Don't forget to subscribe, and I guess I'll give you 2 sample questions which you can do yourself and check yourself by expanding the formula. So that's one right there, 3x squared plus 27. Another one, I guess, will be x squared plus 12x plus 30. Sounds good. So you can do these 2 questions and enjoy yourself. Hope you learned something.